Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider for Thursday, November 4th, 2021. Kevin Rogers with you, and we got a lot to discuss as far as trends go, as Vince Akins will join us coming up in just a few moments. He joins us every Thursday here on the live stream during football season to talk college and NFL trends for some of the top games of the week. Also, we'll talk NBA as well coming up in just a little bit. But before we get to Vince, want to tell you about our friends at BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. That's right. And the promo going on now for new players only, bet $10 to win $200. If your team scores a touchdown, bet on any NFL money line. And if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. Again, for new players only, must be 21 years or older. And also legal in the following states: Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. only. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sportsbooks. All right, let's get it going now as we bring on Vince Akins to discuss NFL and college football trends. And Vince, before we get to the trends, you're based in Ohio. What in the world's going on with Odell Beckham Jr. right now?
Honestly, I'm trying to avoid the nitty-gritty of that situation. Other than say, it doesn't seem like Odell is going to be playing for the Browns this week or anytime soon. Most likely never again. I don't know if there's a right side between the Baker-Odell side of this, and we'll see how long either of them necessarily are for the Browns. Obviously, I would expect you're going to see a lot more Baker than Odell with Cleveland, but yeah, it hasn't been pretty, and it's definitely been a distraction this week. We'll see how that plays into Sunday at Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, and one last thing before we get to the trends, like, is it someone's fault? I know that Odell's dad came out, Baker's not finding him, but it feels like Odell, like, he's not put up the numbers since he's gone to Cleveland. Like, is there anybody's fault in this, or it's just the marriage just doesn't work with these two?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of factors. I mean, some people obviously saw the Odell's dad video. I mean, there are certainly plays where, Baker's missing Odell, but that's true of every quarterback. And, I don't necessarily think Baker's the elite tier of quarterbacks by any means. Where he falls under that probably remains to be determined. But, some quarterbacks are going to miss receivers that are open on some plays. I think some of it too is the Kevin Stefanski scheme. I mean, the Browns offense, very tight end, very running back heavy, and it was always designed to be that way. And that's not necessarily going to feature a number one receiver in the same manner that some other offenses would.
Now let's look at tonight's game, Vince. Jets and Colts. They meet up in Indianapolis, and very interesting with these two, considering the Colts are off of a tough overtime loss to the Titans last week, a game they were up 14-0 early. They had a shot at the end to win it. They went to overtime. They ended up losing. Carson Wentz throws a pick. He wasn't great last week. Jets are coming off this win over the Bengals. Mike White comes out of nowhere for Zach Wilson, who was hurt, and he ends up beating Cincinnati as a double-digit home underdog. So now Jets back on the road as a dog. What do you have dug up for this game?
Yeah, a couple of interesting things. And let's start with really kind of a unique situation here. That's the Jets. Obviously, you mentioned last week. Their upset win in Cincinnati is generally about a 10.5-point dog in that game. 10.5-point dogs again here. So we're looking at going back all the way 30-plus years here. This is only the 11th time a team is a 10-plus point dog, a double-digit dog, coming off a win as a double-digit dog. And in those games, teams are 3-7 against the spread and just 2-8 over/under, so 8 out of 10 unders. That's again as a double-digit dog coming off a win as a double-digit dog. And just since going back to November 2009, teams have failed to cover the last 4 times in this situation. So pretty unique circumstances to see a team pull off that level of an upset and then be in that situation the next week. So kind of looking at the Jets specifically, obviously we're going to have to shrink the level of win as an upset. So we're looking at the Jets coming off a win as at least a 4-point underdog. This goes back to January 2010, just 2-11 against the spread, coming off that kind of upset win. It already happened once this year in the London game after the Jets had upset the Tennessee the week prior to that. Finally, turning to the total here, an interesting one. The Colts have gone under in 8 straight games playing as a double-digit favorite. That goes back a ways, but just this season, that was already active once with the Colts as big favorites against Houston a few weeks back in that 31-3 win. It was also active twice last season. So recently, Colts as big favorites like they're in this game played a little more conservative and trended towards the under.
Yeah, and we've seen the Colts actually, Vince, a 4-1 overrun. And I agree on the Jets thing as far as this team now getting away from home. Their numbers have not been good. And Mike White, do it again. And Cincinnati, I think, was in a very tough spot last week with their third straight road game. Expectations very high on them. So we'll see what happens now with the Colts as a double-digit favorite tonight. Now let's go to Saturday. And Army facing Air Force. That game is at the Texas Rangers Stadium at Globe Life Park in Arlington. First time they're having a football game there. So they're playing close to Jerry's World, just next door at the baseball stadium. Low total, of course, with the service academies. What do you have with Army and Air Force?
Sure. I'll start off with the big system in this game that I've mentioned earlier this season, once already on the show here. That is matchups of service academy teams. So you're looking at Army, Navy, and or Air Force, 2 of the 3 playing. Since 2006, just 936-1 on the over-under. So that's 36 unders, 9 overs in that stretch. And looking back just 2013, it's 321-1 hitting the under. So obviously, to run heavy service academy teams, as all 3 are, they've really hit the unders, even if the totals have kept dropping in recent years as people become more aware of this. And obviously another low total game here. Unders still have reliably hit in these games. So what's interesting about this game that I wanted to look at is, Army having allowed 70 points last game to Wake Forest, and yet the total in this game just 37. Big dichotomy in between that points allowed last game and this total. So going back to 2006, where our numbers go, this is the first time a team's played a total under 43 that allowed at least 65 points last game. So we're not even talking that close to those numbers. Army allowed 70 points last game, and now this total is just 37. No team allowed more than 65 points last game has played a total under 43 next game. So then I had to expand it out a little further and looking at just going back to 2018, teams that allowed at least 60 points last game and now are playing to a total under 50 this game. They're just 2-10 against the spread going back to 2018. So we're talking a higher total a lower total and a high number of points allowed last game. Obviously not to the extremes that Army is facing in this game.
You know what? When you look at the time of possession in that game, Vince, Wake Forest scored 70 points in like 17 minutes, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, that's one of those, that whole box score is a real outlier. And that's one of those you're going to look back at years from now and say, how did this happen? Just Army scoring 56 points against a team like Wake Forest is amazing. But yeah, scoring 70 points, I believe, 17 and change time possession, just unbelievable efficiency from Wake Forest.
And now we'll see what they do in this baseball stadium. It's a new surroundings, for both these teams, and it should be interesting. SEC, same state, but bigger stakes. Auburn and Texas A&M, they meet in College Station, the 3:30 game on CBS. And A&M had some struggles early in the season. They've bounced back, obviously. The big win over Alabama. They've won a few in a row now. Auburn has just been so up and down at times. You think they're out of it, then they play well, then they lose. But Auburn here, what are your thoughts with them as a short dog against Texas A&M?
Sure, a couple of team trends active in the game of the week, I guess you would say, in college football. Looking at Auburn first, last week the win over Ole Miss, but still allowed Ole Miss to move the ball pretty steadily in that game, gave up 26 first downs. Since November 2014, Auburn's 0-8 against the spread, coming off a win where they're favored and allowed more than 25 first downs to the opponent. So on the other side of the ball, Texas A&M coming off a pretty comfortable win over South Carolina last game, rushed for 290 yards in that game, which is something big for the Aggies. I think particularly this year's offense that has fluctuated in times. Since 2018, Texas A&M 7-0-1 against the spread. If they're not 15-plus point favorites, coming off a game where they rushed for at least 230 yards. So really establish that ground game last game. I think that's the way Texas A&M really wants to succeed this year. You look at some of those early outlying performances where they struggled against, Colorado is the one that stands out to me. Getting that ground game established can be important for the Aggies in the big matchup.
Now let's look at two NFL games, Vince, and obviously the big story this week, Aaron Rodgers not playing for Green Bay, tested positive for COVID, and the Packers head to Kansas City to face the Chiefs. This game was at 1, now it's up to 7. Jordan Love is going to make his debut at quarterback, and again, it is tough with somebody who has not played yet, who is interfering with these numbers. But what do you have for this matchup at Arrowhead?
Sure. So, this is obviously seeing Green Bay getting this kind of number, unique situation. So, we look at some of these outlier league-wide systems, and I have a couple here. First off, teams that are at least 7-point dogs in at least game 7 of the season that have won at least 85% of their games. So you're looking for a little bit of time into the season for that record to have established. That's the case with the Packers. Teams at least 7-point dogs in the spot are just 8-1 against the spread historically, and 0-7 against the spread since 2005. You look at this system the next week, say, okay, well, it's an outlier. They have Jordan Love playing, not Aaron Rodgers. I would say, well, that's kind of the point of these systems is, a team that is won at least 85% of their games, that is at least a 7-point dog. Looking at those past matchups too, and I'm not pulling up the specific matchups here, but something was going on to make that the case. That there are unique circumstances for a reason, and those past games are unique circumstances as well. And that's what we're trying to cover with these numbers. So one with a little more of a sample size, teams that are at least 7-point dogs against a team they have at least 2 more wins than. Green Bay qualifying in this game having 3 more wins than the Chiefs. Teams in this situation just 12-21-1 historically against the spread. So usually we're trending towards there in general. Teams that are huge dogs in kind of this outlier situation that have had a lot of success in the season or much better than their opponent on paper, looking at record, the line has been warranted and it's actually sort of undervalued favorite in these games. So also a couple team trends in this game that are sort of interesting, trying to look around what's going on with Aaron Rodgers here specifically, starting with the Chiefs. The total in this game under 49, kind of a low total for the Chiefs in recent seasons. That's because the Packers team total has dropped, but it sets up a different circumstances in this game. So since 2018, the Chiefs 10-3 against the spread in games where the total is 49 or below. So you might think, that's not necessarily the style the Chiefs are used to playing or want to play, but they've actually done pretty well covering in lower total games. On the other side of the equation, I'm looking at the Packers here facing a Chiefs team that loves to throw the ball. Chiefs second in the league with over 42 pass attempts per game. Green Bay, looking back to November 2012, is 0-10 against the spread as a road dog, facing an opponent that throws at least 36 passes per game. And particularly noteworthy, they failed to cover those games by an average of 13.5 points per game. So already being the underdog, they've seen some serious blowouts, the Packers, in games where they're road dogs and facing a very pass-heavy team.
Yeah, obviously, Vince, that trend about the teams as 7-point dogs or more against a team they have 2 more wins than, we know Green Bay would not be a 7-point dog if Aaron Rodgers played. But just to the point that there, like you said, there's a reason why they are this price. And that's a hell of a jump, though, to go from 1 to 7 with Aaron Rodgers out. And Jordan Love is the big X factor here because Kansas City's defense isn't great. We know that. Chiefs have not been good covering the spread. That Jordan Love, is he going to be like a Zach Wilson, or is he going to be, again, 1-game sample size? Is he going to be Mike White and throw for 400 yards? And that's what we just don't know. But also Devontae Adams, we got to see if he's going to play too.
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of, this might be a tough game to end up handicapping because we just don't know with Jordan Love. I mean, he does have a first-round pedigree. Reports coming out of the Packers have been a bit mixed, I think, about his performance in practices and training camps going back the last 2 years. But last week you mentioned, Daniel Jones kept the Giants in a game against the Chiefs. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be Aaron Rodgers to keep the Packers competitive in this game. But, we don't know what that floor is with Jordan Love. So, it's a little hard to establish exactly where to value the Packers in this game.
Now let's look at Sunday night, Titans-Rams, and another game in which, point spread moves a little bit, not as much as the Green Bay game, but Derrick Henry not going to play for the Titans. He's likely done for the season. You see what Adrian Peterson, if he has anything left in the backfield. Julio Jones is a question mark. And Tennessee now going out west to face the Rams, and the Rams haven't covered the last few weeks. But also, Vince, again, You're laying 17 to Detroit. You're laying 17 to Houston, and they're up, 36-0 or 38-0, whatever it was on Houston before the Texans scored a bunch of meaningless points. But what do you have for this game coming up Sunday night in LA?
Yeah, just talking about that Derrick Henry situation first. This is a situation where usually, running back value in the lines, you don't factor a whole lot. But Tennessee's a unique situation for how fundamental Derrick Henry is to their offense and what they want to establish, how good he has been, and then B, just how little they have in backup running backs. And you mentioned signing Adrian Pearson this week and Jeremy McNichols going to get some run in this game. The difference between their starting running back and their backup running backs is far greater than any other team in the league. So it makes sense that's going to be factored in to this line. So a couple things on Tennessee here. First of all, since November 2013, as a touchdown or greater dog, 7 points. They're just 4-11 against the spread. But the real interesting note on that is all 4 of those covers were outright wins for Tennessee. So as 15 games as a touchdown or greater dog, going back the last 8 years here, 11 games they failed to cover, and 4 games they won outright as huge underdogs. A couple noteworthy ones were the 2019 playoffs, where they upset the Ravens outright as, I believe, a 9.5-point dog in that game, and then came out the next week and then lost against the Chiefs and failed to cover as a big dog in that game as well. So really interesting. It might be a situation where you're thinking, either Rams spread or Titans money line if the Titans are someone that you're interested in this game. The other noteworthy trend, this one just goes back to October 2019. The Titans coming off a game where they controlled the ball for between 31.5 and 41 minutes. So serious control in the time possession battle in that game. Titans are 11-0-1 on the over-under the next week. So that's 11 overs and 1 push. Last week, they controlled time possession against Indy, having 34-59 in that matchup that went to overtime with some brief time possession there for the Titans.
So you got a lot of good things to digest here with all of these games coming up this weekend. And Vince Akins, you can find him on Twitter at SB Breakers. Find his NFL and college football selections as well at Vegas Insider. And Vince, as always, we appreciate the time, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Yep. Thanks for having me. Good luck, and we'll talk again next week.
All right. There is Vince Akins, and always good info from him. I'm telling you, the Chiefs-Packers game coming up on Sunday at Arrowhead. Don't overthink things on either side as far as saying, okay, Green Bay just went into Arizona, who was undefeated. They were a dog. They came out and won. Nobody has seen Jordan Love play in a meaningful game this season. And Devontae Adams, we'll see if he returns coming up this week, which obviously is a big deal to the Packers offense. But the Chiefs also have been terrible against the spread. So are you going to lay 7 with the Chiefs and think, all right, well, they're playing Jordan Love. He's never played before, and they should cover this easily? Or do you say, all right, well, Jordan Love's facing a Kansas City defense that isn't great. Kansas City's been living on the edge the entire season. Why not take points as long as Jordan Love doesn't make mistakes? Take the points here with this Packer team who's already 7-1, and Kansas City's playing for their playoff lives. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. It's not too early anymore. It's too early when you're 1-2. But Kansas City won at 4-4. They got to get their stuff together right now. They're in a competitive division in the AFC West, and Buffalo's already running away. Well, I shouldn't say running away, but Buffalo, they are up there. Tennessee is up there. You've lost to both those teams already. So I just don't know if for Kansas City, if you can make a real good case for them, or even with Green Bay on the flip side, just because of the Jordan Love factor. So I just think that game is very difficult to handicap. So don't force it if you just want to make a play on that game because it's at 425 coming up on Sunday. All right, we'll talk some NBA coming up in just a moment. Want to remind you about DraftKings and the championship series. Guess what? Starts tomorrow in Weehawken, New Jersey, the Sportsbook National Championship. It's coming up this weekend in Weehawken, New Jersey at the NVU Hotel right outside New York City. Now, players can play for a top prize of $1 million. That's right, $2 million in prizes handed out, $1 million for the winner. Now, it's a $10,000 buy-in for the tournament. Players will receive a $5,000 bankroll for the weekend, and you could bet on NBA, NFL, and college football. Now, one thing that's pretty cool is that a few years ago, this was only for New Jersey. Now, you can still play in New Jersey, but now if you're in one of the DraftKings, there's a few of them eligible states, you could play there. So you don't have to necessarily be in New Jersey to play in the tournament. You could actually be in one of the other states. So that's something that works out very well in case you don't want to travel and you can, end up going there. That the different states that, let me see, I had it up a second ago, but you have a lot of prizes here. $1 million for the $1 million for the winner. And I just had it up and it went away. But the point is that you have all of this money you can win. And $2 million in guaranteed prizes, $1 million to the winner. Again, 3-day contest, total betting bankroll of $5,000. And the leader is determined by total winnings. But each contestant must wager at least $1,000 over the course of the competition to be eligible for the leaderboard payouts. So the venue, Enview Hotel in Weehawken, New Jersey, right outside of New York City. You can also bet in other eligible states that DraftKings has their sportsbook at. Check it out, DraftKings.com. It's the championship series. That's right, be the GOAT at DraftKings today. All right, let's now take a look at NBA for tonight. And last night you had another night of several low-scoring games. That's the theme right now in the NBA, is all these unders. When you go through last night, and you had 6-1, 6-2, 7-3-1 to the under last night. It's just crazy. It really is how you don't have these high-scoring games anymore. I did say, though, last night, not that it totally was overwhelming, but the Nets finally got their first over of the season against the Hawks, 117-108 victory, barely went over 221. So that one hit, but a lot of other games that remained under the total, Portland and Cleveland. Portland's 0-4 now on the road this season under Chauncey Billups. Cavs have played very well. Boston, they had a very nice comeback against Orlando, and you're like, oh, what's the big deal? 31-10 in the third. And they were trailing a lot of that first half, and they ended up that was a much-needed win for the Celtics. They play the Heat tonight. We'll talk about that in a second. Toronto beats Washington again. They dominated. Actually, let me rephrase that. Washington beat Toronto in the opener. They dominated them. Raptors bounced back with that win last night in D.C. Both games stayed under the total, and Toronto's actually playing very well. Scotty Barnes, their top rookie out of Florida State, he's hurt, but Fred VanVleet played well, and the Raptors coming back to life a little bit after they had a slow start. Philadelphia, they were in control of that game against Chicago last night. They held off the Bulls 103-98, only second loss for the Bulls this season. The Pacers win again. They knock off the Knicks, so the Knicks with a couple losses now in a row. Denver falls at Memphis, so the Grizzlies took 2 from the Nuggets in that 2-game series at FedEx Forum. And Nikola Jokic had a shot to tie it late last night, missed it. Clippers ended up pulling away from the Timberwolves, 126-115, 79 points scored in the third quarter. That helped it easily go over. Dallas did not cover. They were laying 2 against San Antonio. They won 109-108. That was a back-and-forth game, but Dallas could bounce back from them after they lost the night before to Miami. And San Antonio's got 1 win since they beat Orlando in the opener. Sacramento, they pull away from New Orleans, 112-99. Second time the Kings have beaten the Pelicans in the last week. And New Orleans, they're hanging in these games, but for some reason they fall apart at the end. That happened in the Phoenix game a few nights ago. They scored 12 against the Kings in the fourth quarter last night. So the Pelicans stuck on one win so far on the season. Golden State, they end up pulling away from Charlotte last night, 114-92. Warriors have just one loss in the season. That came in overtime to Memphis, a game that they totally threw away. Now let's take a look at tonight's games. Only 5 of them. 76ers and the Pistons, they meet in Detroit tonight. And Philadelphia, look, they're getting it done without Ben Simmons. And, I mean, not to say Ben Simmons is the savior, but a very important part to that Sixers team. And Philadelphia is 6-2 right now. Detroit's 1-6. Their only win came against Orlando. So Philly, you wonder if this is a sandwich spot for them because their next game is at Chicago on Saturday. Then they get the Knicks at home in a revenge spot. They get Milwaukee at home. Now you're facing Detroit, who you beat 110-102 at home last week. And the Pistons, they're off a couple blowout losses to the Bucks and the Nets. So if you want to lay the 6 there with Philadelphia, feel free. Utah and Atlanta, they meet at State Farm Arena. And the Jazz at 6-1. They held off the Kings a few nights ago. And Utah back on the road. They get the Heat on Saturday, then the Magic on Sunday. So they get a little Southeast Division road swing here. Atlanta off the loss last night to Brooklyn. That's now 3 straight road losses for the Hawks. And this team is 1-4 on the road. Their only win came by 3 at New Orleans. They're 0-5 ATS on the road this year. But at home, Atlanta, though, 3-0 straight up and against the spread. So Atlanta's not been good on the road after last night's loss, but at home, they've been good. So that's a very tough game tonight. Celtics and the Heat from Miami. And these teams have gone back through the years. Big rivalry. And Miami at 6-1. Only loss came in overtime at Indiana. Heat back at home after beating the Grizzlies and the Mavericks on the road. Now they got Boston, and Boston off that win at Orlando last night. So the short trip from Orlando to Miami. And that snapped a 3-game skid. Celtics actually been all right on the road because at home they're 0-3. But on the road, they've won at Orlando, they've won at Charlotte, won at Houston, lost in overtime to Washington, lost in overtime to New York. So they've been in all these games away from TD Garden. And the Heat actually won both their games against Boston at TD Garden last year, but lost at home to the Celtics. And Miami, hey, 5-0, straight up ATS the last 5. They've covered every game that they've won. And the 2 home wins prior to tonight, Charlotte and Orlando. And they also beat Milwaukee, but Milwaukee, that was a tough spot for them after they played the Nets. The 2 late games, Rockets and Suns out in Phoenix. Houston at 1-6. And their only win came against Oklahoma City. So take that for whatever you want. So Phoenix, this is a homestand that they had to take care of business. They lost to Sacramento on a buzzer beater first game. Came back and beat Cleveland. Came back and beat New Orleans. So the Suns really have not been sharp, honestly, at all this season. They beat the Lakers as a road dog, but besides that, 29-point loss to Portland, lost by 12 at home to Denver, the 3-point loss to Sacramento. Like Phoenix is maybe a little bit of an NBA Finals hangover right now. Houston, meanwhile, they've lost 5 straight, but 3 straight covers as a double-digit dog and losses to Dallas and twice to the Lakers. They hung with the Lakers in both those games. Well, let me take that back. The first game, they were getting destroyed, and they got a backdoor cover. Second game, they played a lot better and hung and lost by 2. But they also have a 31-point loss to Utah in the middle of that. But on the road, though, sans the Minnesota loss, they've been all right. But at the same time, Phoenix has not been very sharp. Lakers and Thunder, the last game of the night. And for all, it feels like for all the, I don't want to say issues, discussion around the Lakers, they're 5-3. Now, maybe they're 5-3 without, the toughest schedule, beating San Antonio, Houston twice, and beating Cleveland, and they came back to beat Memphis. But the Lakers, I mean, they're winning some games, and after this, they go to Portland, and Portland has been up and down. But at least LA, they're taking care of their business right now. But as a double-digit favorite, 0-2 against the spread for LA. Oklahoma City, they're 3-1 against the spread their last 4. They did bounce back. Okay, they lost, but after not playing well against Golden State, they lost by 5 to the Clippers as 12.5-point underdogs. So that's a bit of a positive. But also, when you look at Oklahoma City, what they've scored this year, 86, 91, 103, 98, had 123 in that crazy comeback win over the Lakers, 82, 94. So the last time these teams played in Oklahoma City, back on October 27th, that was the game the Lakers went up by 26. LeBron didn't play. Oklahoma City made that massive comeback. Russell Westbrook got upset at the end because because the Thunder had a steal and a dunk at the end. Like, it didn't really matter. Russell Westbrook's just angry that they lost. So Lakers were laying 5.5 in that game. So a revenge spot, actually, for the Lakers, who their only loss came to Oklahoma City. So figure that one out. So that's the look at the NBA for tonight. And we talked about earlier with Vince Akins, the Jets and the Colts. They hook up in Indianapolis. I just can't see the Jets scoring a lot of points tonight after what they did last week against the Bengals. It felt like it was a perfect spot. Cincinnati in a third straight road game. And I got to think that the Colts can at least try to slow them down a little bit. Now you're on the road. You're not playing at MetLife Stadium anymore. T.Y. Hilton not playing for Indianapolis. That also doesn't help the over if you want to take that tonight. Now, before we get out of here, and we'll tell you about BetMGM in just a second, the Breeders' Cup. All right, that's coming up on Saturday. And our man, Anthony Stabile, the Big A, I have a video with him you could find on our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider. Also, you could find in many places under our horse racing arena. Anthony, he has written up previews. He has best bets, analysis, predictions, all of that for all the races, the Breeders' Cup, for Juvenile, for all of that on Friday, all the races, the Classic on Saturday. He breaks them all down, 14 races total, and you can watch the video on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. Just look for the Breeders' Cup, best bets and predictions with myself, with Anthony Stabile. So check that out before you make any wagers on the Breeders' Cup coming up Saturday out in California. BetMGM. They're the king of sports books. You know that already. If you didn't know that, now you do. And want to tell you that for new customers only, bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown. So bet on any NFL money line, and if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. New players only, must be 21 years or older, eligible in Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. only. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. My thanks to Vince Akins for joining the show today to break down the trends. You can check out his picks at Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. Coming up tomorrow, we'll break down college football and the NFL, looking ahead to the weekend. So all of that is coming up on Friday, so make sure to tune in for that. And if you missed any of the show, we'll have it on our homepage on Vegas Insider all day and also on our YouTube channel as well. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. And as always, best of luck with your bets.